Nico, it's Roman. Let's go bowling.
Grand Theft Auto 4 is an ugly, boring, inconsistent, atmospheric, emotionally compelling, and incredibly immersive mess of a game. What a way to start a video about one of Rockstar's most critically acclaimed titles of all time, huh? Though to be quite honest, back in the day I never liked Grand Theft Auto 4. When it was released in 2008, I dropped the game after several hours of playing and promptly forgot about it. Which, to be fair, at the time was my experience with literally every GTA. I owned all the main titles, never liked a single one. But now, as an adult possessing a little skill called critical thinking, in combination with more than a decade of game design experience in the industry, I figured it's time to get back to the franchise and dissect it from a more analytical lens. Grand Theft Auto 4 in particular is a very interesting beast to discuss. Despite it still standing at the moment of writing position of the third best rated game of all time on Metacritic, which in itself is a feat defying statistical probability given the large amount of reviews, GTA 4 is also one of the most contested titles from the franchise. And always has been, it's not some new phenomenon that has appeared only years later. So we have a game that's a beloved bestseller, but at the same time is widely criticized and called overrated. Some spend hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of hours in it, while others can't even bear a couple. What is it that makes GTA 4 so polarizing? That's what I'm going to try and figure out in this review, which will cover the standalone DLC campaigns as well. If you want to play GTA 4 in its purest form, I would suggest the Xbox 360 version or alternatively the PS3 one. The PC port is, let's say, problematic, but with community patches like Fusion Fix, which is what I used when capturing the footage, you will get a comparable experience. As long as you cap it to 30 FPS, that is, since anything higher does lead to some issues even with the fix installed. Naturally, I have to mention that even though at times I will be quite harsh towards Grand Theft Auto 4, at no point do I invite attacks on the developers themselves. We are discussing the game, not the people behind it. Their competency definitely should not be questioned. What I do want to question, though, is the definition of what GTA 4 is. Or, well, is trying to be. Because only by answering that can we define whether the game succeeds at what it does or not. While this is definitely not a requirement, almost every coherent game can be boiled down to a fantasy, a distillation of what experience it tries to provide. I usually try to keep video game discussions self-contained and not divert attention towards other games, but I think for the sake of example, it will help to take a look at the fantasy of Grand Theft Auto 3, which would be causing chaos and destruction across Liberty City while rising through criminal ranks. Everything in GTA 3 facilitates that fantasy. Here's an abstract example of what can happen. You get a story mission to mow down triad members with a flamethrower. Doing so causes fires in the environment and forces fire trucks to appear. With the mission complete, you may now steal a fire truck and activate the firefighter side activity while crushing the triad members who are now angry at you, which might begin a police chase. Hilarity ensues and things can just keep escalating. The game doesn't leave the chaos and destruction part simply to the whims and desires of the player, but pushes towards them and creates chain reactions through how it handles the missions and activities. Regardless of what one thinks about gameplay itself, that's a successfully implemented fantasy. So why is this important? Well, it feels like Grand Theft Auto 4 doesn't know what kind of fantasy it wants us to experience. Is it causing chaos and destruction across the city like in GTA 3? I would hardly say so. You can't really start a chaotic chain of events by the virtue of doing a mission. You have to specifically just begin doing random shit in the open world. Missions, especially story ones, are really self-contained, to the point that many at the moment of completion literally reset the wanted level and remove absolutely all police units chasing you.
Come on!
Huh?
Fuck me sideways!
Yeah. Be smart, friend. Positive! That's me! Here's the role I was gonna give that lunch shark. Maybe I'll keep a 10 spot for myself, though. Who knows what I'll need? So long. Be serene.
The world is full of answers, but you are asking the wrong questions. Please, trust me.
But why are the missions so self-contained? Is it because through them GTA 4 tries to present a compelling crime drama? Again, I wouldn't say that's the case. In fact, I'm not sure why the game has a reputation of taking its main narrative very seriously, because GTA 4 is hilarious in its crassness, ridiculousness and satire so in your face that one can wonder whether it can be called satire in the first place. Look, having serious themes and taking a look at dark topics is not the same as having a grim, realistic tone. GTA 4 undoubtedly remains comedic in nature throughout practically the entire experience. There's only several really important moments with actual gravitas. Most other times, whenever the game tries to veer onto a serious topic, it is slapped back onto the dark comedy track.
War is where the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other. I was very young and very angry. Maybe that is no excuse. Roman? Roman! Are you sleeping, you fat fuck? Come on!
Okay, so maybe GTA 4 tries to be a satirically ridiculous pastiche of the American lifestyle, criticizing the concept of the American dream. After all, the only character who consistently stays multifaceted among a bunch of caricatures is our protagonist, Nico Bellic himself, which honestly is a great way to represent culture shock. He's an immigrant from the Balkans, presumably Serbia, though that's never stated directly for some reason, and yet he's constantly met by the absolute horseshit that is life in Liberty City. As a response, he keeps pushing back with ridicule and sarcasm himself.
Ooh, that's funny. You know, for a dumb yokel, you're a very funny guy.
Yes, and for an annoying dick, you're really an annoying dick.
But then why is the world built in such an insanely intricate, realistic and honestly excessive detail? The game is so detailed that when driving a car while listening to radio, you can hear the feedback noise distortion from speakers right before your cell phone rings.
Tiny working signals, a tiny graveyard.
Nico, my friend Brucey has a business proposition for us.
You going to pay me to pump him full of steroids and tell him how great his abs are?
That's one of many points that literally nobody would complain about had it not been present in the game, but it is. So maybe all this means that Grand Theft Auto 4 wants to be a crime life simulator. With such an amount of details put in, it definitely can be. But then you have side activities like killing flying rats, also known as pigeons, as the most boring to find collectibles. And if you get into a police car, you can start vigilante-style missions to take care of most wanted criminals. How would that make sense in a realistic crime simulator? There's no real motivation other than a message from one steroid-obsessed guy that you can do that if you want, which is an argument more fit in arcade ROMs where you're just free to do whatever and find your own fun. But how to really find your own fun when the core mechanics themselves try to be very grounded? Even if we put aside the questions of implementation like clunkiness and sluggishness, the systems attempt to be realistic to a fault. In many ways they're functional more so than engaging. But through these mechanics you can facilitate interactions that can be considered fun, especially those that relate to physics. And there GTA 4 actually actively plays around with reality. It takes proper rule sets and then exaggerates them at certain points for interesting effects. What makes it all the more confusing is that you can always find something in GTA 4 that will go against absolutely every point I have made so far. There's no consistency. Really, the only thing we can say with absolute certainty is that the game has got tons of details, tons of polish, and tons of content. But what does that say about GTA 4's fantasy? How is there's just tons of stuff and experience? Does a set of full-fledged cabaret shows really add more meaning to the title? And I'm not kidding when I say full-fledged. I mean, see for yourself.
The incredible climber! Welcome. I am constantly asked, Kleinman, when did you discover you were magic? Have you ever used your powers for good? Like making cancer patients or nuclear warheads disappear? One man even asked me, can you make my masculinity disappear? But I am here to entertain you, not your bi-curious fantasies. I will now make my assistant float! I will defeat gravity! I will be the master of Isaac Newton! Now, arise! 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 Yes, there! Higher, higher, lower, higher, lower. Ah, yes, I can make this filthy woman fall under my dominion. Oh, arise, yes.
Suck, asshole!
Eat shit. Oh, Laurel, Laurel. Oh, you're a quadriplegic.
Don't worry, everybody. She's probably only paraplegic.
I'll be honest, I enjoyed just sitting and watching this. It was ridiculous and fun and at the same time very atmospheric. But then right after the show, I went into a story mission with an excruciatingly boring motorcycle chase where the game made the target I was supposed to kill invincible until a certain moment. The dude's bike was literally pushing other cars away, defying the laws of physics, even though outside of missions, other gameplay entities follow the same rules as us. When that kind of stuff happens, and it happens very often, you can't even call the game a sandbox, since many attempts at creativity are going to be severely punished. So what does all that say about the GTA 4 experience? Honestly, I have no clue. I can't answer the question of what GTA 4 is about because it's not about anything. It's a bunch of stuff. Building blocks just laying down on the floor. And what you get out of the game depends entirely on which blocks you decide to engage with and how fond you are of them or of some particular details within them. This is why the game is so polarizing. So with that in mind, the only thing we can really do to continue the discussion is just start looking at all these building blocks. Let's tackle the core mechanics first. We can't talk about the gameplay of GTA 4 without mentioning its physics simulation. For better or worse, it's at the center of everything. I do mean everything. Obviously, many games utilize physics, be it in rudimentary or advanced form, but unless gameplay has to specifically revolve around something that can't be done without complex physics calculations, usually they just serve a supporting role, for the most part visual. With Grand Theft Auto 4 though, the physics are the mechanics. All three core facets of the experience are governed by physics. Not just driving, but combat too, and even movement. This applies not only to your character, but NPCs as well. They can literally just trip and fall over your foot because all body part collisions and applied force is authentically calculated. Of course, when literally everything is governed by physics to such a degree, everything is also governed by animations. And having animations dictate how the game plays is, well, it's at the very least questionable. And GTA 4 understands that, which is why some physical interactions related to your player character are disabled depending on the gameplay state. For example, you can trip over yourself or the environment when drunk, which is certainly amusing, but this behavior doesn't exist in normal gameplay, otherwise it would have been impossible to even run up the stairs without tripping had there been just a little bit of imperfection in animation blending. Still, there's only so many exceptions the game can have, and the animation's physics-centered behavior doesn't necessarily transpose well onto actual mechanics and controls. Though there is an advantage in terms of immersion, as you feel weight just from the very basic act of movement. That's one of the reasons why GTA 4 is much more comfortable to play on a controller than keyboard. Nico's actions feel very delayed when you instantly switch states through digital buttons. Moving the analog stick around at least partially corresponds to that weight and the arcs or turning animations the character has to do. Though, to be fair, sprinting is much more comfortable when using the keyboard layout, as you can just hold Shift. On a controller, you hold A to jog, but to sprint you have to keep tapping it. A very tiresome act, mired with accessibility problems. But while I don't like this in terms of mechanics, I have to admit that it does represent well the required effort to sprint in reality. Combine that with the weight of the character and you actually have to manage how you run, which is not that engaging of a process, fitting into what I said before about GTA's 4 mechanics being more functional than anything. But weirdly enough, this is also where we get to the first set of internal contradictions even within the gameplay set of GTA 4's building blocks. How it handles combat, or rather, shooting specifically. You see, there is a cover system in the game, and it is very cumbersome to use as the cover it detects is based on where the character was looking at the time of the button press, not where you are pushing the stick. Considering the weight and delay in all actions and how animations take priority, Nico can take cover in all the wrong places. Now, while this is annoying, it would be overall consistent had it not been for the snappy shooting mechanics with a very sticky auto-aim system. While you still have manual aim when you only partially push the left trigger, most of the time you're going to press it fully, so Nico would instantly snap his crosshair towards an enemy. Technically, you can also switch the enemy you're locked onto with the right stick, but that works only half the time. I think because it conflicts with the other function on the same stick, and that is the precision targeting. Lock-on centers on the target's body, meaning that if you want to shoot them in the arm or the legs, you have to move the right stick a little. Here's the thing though, with only a few possible exceptions, there is no reason to target anything other than the head, as headshots are a guaranteed one-hit kill. Even helmets don't protect the face. This means that you can easily kill pretty much every target by locking onto them and pushing the right stick up a bit. Every shootout is trivialized quite a bit that way. Technically, there is recoil, but it exists only for the character and not for the player. Camera and reticule remain static, though the crosshair circle does enlarge as you shoot to represent the potential bullet spread. But this leads to two weird consequences. First, despite having different shooting properties in terms of gameplay, every weapon feels exactly the same. With the exception of the rocket launcher, where you at least have to time and predict where your target is going to be located if it's moving. Second, the best weapon in the game is a simple pistol, as having the smallest recoil it is pretty much guaranteed to hit the head every time you target it, even for enemies very far away. Nico is a hardened war veteran, so contextually there's no issues with feeling like a killing machine. But this snappy, fast-paced and somewhat arcadey shooting gameplay mechanic goes entirely against how you move, where you can feel the weight of your controls and have to adapt to that. It doesn't help that in a lot of cases the only thing the enemies are doing is sit behind the same piece of cover and peek out of it from time to time. Which is weird because the AI is not as simplistic should you cause mayhem in the open world. The police will try to flank and surround you. But during the course of the actual missions, most fighting is going to feel like participating in a shooting gallery. Though the mechanics are only partially at fault, there's issues of level design too, but we're going to tackle that later. The shooting mechanics provide a stark contrast not only to movement but close combat too, which is also weighty and honestly clunky. Neither Nico nor NPCs will try to close the distance during attack animations. This transforms fist fighting into a weird affair where the biggest challenge is to actually get in range and manage to hit someone. But at least you don't really have to engage in close combat much, unlike driving. Oh, driving in GTA 4. As technically impressive as it is mechanically infuriating. A marvelous work of engineering that I absolutely deride and hate to play. I am so glad there's a cab-based fast travel system in this game. The more I played, the more I avoided using cars myself, instead catching cabs more and more often.
Yellow car!
They became my main mode of transportation, unless Nico would misinterpret the hold button command and decide to steal the cab himself. Of course, like with shooting, there's some fault related to mission design, but the root of the problem is that driving. It just feels awful to engage with it on a mechanical level. Before we go into those details, I actually want to talk about things that astounded me, positively speaking. The simulation aspect is absolutely bonkers. One of GTA 4's greatest achievements is how absolutely every car feels different depending on its suspension structure, size, weight, materials, and the form of the car itself. The damage system is also insanely intricate and changes how cars feel. If a bumper is on the edge of breaking off, it will affect how you drive. Any sort of dent is going to be realistically represented on the shape of the car, and this applies to all cars. But what kind of damage the car receives depends on the speed, weight of objects, and so on. Every car element has a dedicated set of potential sound and visual effects attached to them. A good example would be the sirens. This is how the police car ones normally sound. And this is what it sounds like if some of the sirens are broken. While we're speaking about sounds, their design and logic is amazing for the other aspects we have discussed as well. The footsteps sound changes not only depending on the type of surface you walk on, which is pretty standard, but also what shoes you wear. While things like explosions during firefights actually muffle the soundscape for a while. The attention to this kind of detail is amazing and adds a lot to the feeling of immersion, even if it's not that great to play. And here's the thing, one of the reasons it doesn't always feel that great to play is because GTA 4 isn't quite sure how far it wants to go with its sense of realism. We've partially touched upon that with its shooting mechanics, but this indecision affects driving far more. The simulation is so authentic that you can literally feel the weight rolling over on one side of the car or the other depending on how much you turn. Which is what leads to one aspect that many people talk about, cars feeling floaty and jumpy. Look, I may not have a driving license in real life, but I've seen enough car accident footage that I can definitely say vehicles are often floaty and jumpy. There is a reason traffic laws exist. These things might be heavy, but they're not built for the shit you'd expect to do in a GTA game. Fast speeds with sharp turns, swiftly weaving between traffic and whatnot. Which in itself might be an argument why a realistic car simulation is a problem. But here's the thing, GTA 4 also tries to cheat physics. I noticed that there's some force that tries to ensure that whatever happens, you eventually get wheels back on the ground unless something makes that literally impossible. Which is not realistic, it's a gameplay concession. Normally, I'd say that's a good thing. But because how otherwise deep GTA 4 simulation is, this aspect seems to mess up physics calculations, particularly when you crash or collide with something, leading to some seemingly little bumps sending you haywire. And that is the main reason behind driving not being that engaging, even if you do get used to the way it controls in general, which you will eventually, though I still never got used to the camera position, and it was annoying to no end that GTA would instantly try to reset the camera whenever I would place it in a more comfortable spot. But you're never actually protected from random, unrealistic shit happening. And it's just the worst when it does in the middle of a mission, especially considering that there is no checkpoints. If you fail for one reason or another, you have to start over from the beginning. This is also why I literally dread having to ride a motorcycle, which I would never do out of my own volition, only when a mission essentially forces me to. You just can never be sure what the fuck will happen with the physics calculations, and that feels awful. Doesn't help that the bastards you have to chase often have physics bending immunity turned on. So this is the weird situation that GTA 4 core mechanics are in. If you value immersion and simulation full of little details, there's a lot for you to enjoy, especially when it comes to cars and driving. I know I just criticized the hell out of it, but from an immersion perspective, it's amazing that you can literally have favorite or hated cars, because each one has significant differences in how it handles and feels to control. But I wouldn't say that anything GTA 4 does is particularly engaging on a mechanical, systemic level. You have to fight with Nico to make sure he moves or takes cover where you want, shooting feels rudimentary, and we're not getting back onto the topic of driving. However, any flaws, inconsistencies and whatnot can be balanced out with proper mission design. And as I have already hinted at, that's not one of GTA 4's greatest strengths either. Level, mission, quest design is the art of taking a limited amount of verbs and keeping them interesting and engaging by putting in as varied situations as possible. Now, it's natural that in a game like GTA 4 most action verbs relate to killing or driving, be it just to reach a place where you kill someone or chase and kill someone. So in principle, there's nothing wrong with most of the game's 90-something missions being about reaching the start point, watching a cutscene, going to a particular spot to initiate either a chase scenario followed by some combat, or a combat scenario followed by a chase or escape. After all, this is what the gameplay is about, that's what you'd expect from Grand Theft Auto 4. However, GTA 4 suffers from a particular set of problems. Most of its missions are heavily scripted, sometimes incredibly rigidly, which wouldn't really be a problem had most of them reached the quality of the 3-Leaf Clover bank heist level, where you have to escape a massive police force by first fighting your way through streets and alleyways of Liberty City, before going underground and avoiding subway trains to reach a car with which you can make a daring escape. This is widely considered to be the best mission in GTA 4, and I would say rightfully so. With the exception of the escape at the end, it will play out practically the same for every player every time, sure, but it is exciting. The sequence balances out flaws of the core gameplay systems and AI by having you constantly move from combat arena to combat arena and act more aggressively as a result. However, all that comes with a but. Calling it the best is a bit of a backhanded compliment, as it's one of the few actually good GTA 4 missions. The tasks in the majority of the game range from passable to outright boring or sometimes infuriating, because they retain the heavily scripted nature but without putting players in actually interesting scenarios, while limiting not only their creativity but also the amount of possible systemic interactions. Which is sort of ludicrous, considering how expensive, not only budget-wise but also in terms of raw CPU power required, all the physics calculations are. One of the most satisfying things in Grand Theft Auto 4 is seeing how enemies react to you shooting them in various body parts. But the game doesn't really let you indulge in this complex physics system it has. First, it's because you don't actually have a lot of health, so being very open and aggressive is not advised. It's best to stay in cover, farther away from the guys shooting at you. While enemies are very rarely put in a situation where you'd be able to see them fall down in various ways, which actually adds a lot of satisfaction to the otherwise simplistic shooting mechanics. But you don't get to see anything since most fights happen either in literal corridors or in closed environments on a single plane with a bunch of cover objects. Objects that a lot of the time you can't destroy. Which again is an inconsistency because there are arenas with practically fully destructible or heavily modifiable environments with very satisfying physics. It's really enjoyable to shoot at a column and see a lot of pieces fall off it and thus making the enemy hiding behind it more visible. But those kinds of environments don't appear often, which is surprising in a game where there are so many individual objects with their own physics that you can push off separately every single condiment from a hot dog stand, you know? There aren't even that many explosive barrels placed around so you could see how enemies fly off and whatnot. A lot of the time they're tucked somewhere not too visible until you kill everyone. And when you do see an explosive barrel, good luck actually making it explode. It is far more difficult to do so than you'd expect. So with combat arenas not taking advantage of all the simulation aspects happening in the game, enjoyment from the fights is left pretty much entirely on the shoulders of the core mechanics, and unless you're fascinated by the visual and sound aspect of it, that's not that great of a draw. What's worse is that GTA 4 missions not only do not take advantage of the fact that this is an open world game, but outright prevent you from trying to make use of that fact. There's a mission where you have to, naturally, kill a guy. You can see his head through a window. What happens if you decide to use a sniper rifle and avoid going inside the building? As soon as the target reticle is on his body, he runs away and everyone starts attacking you. Also, GTA 4 could have you fight through a bunch of corridors and some rooftops before giving a choice to maybe spare the dude if you want, which will lead to some minor repercussions in an open world random encounter. And you know, that kind of consequence is cool, but is it reason enough to make the dude psychic? Him remaining dead is a possible scenario anyways. There's even a more ridiculous example in one other mission where you have to steal a truck. At a certain point, one of the enemy mooks will get into it to drive away. If you decide to shoot him before he does so, you will see the glass break, you will see the blood splatter, but the person won't actually die.
He's a mark, man.
Nope. They will keep driving because GTA 4 wants you to engage in a really boring set piece of holding onto a truck and eventually get into the driver's seat. Like, I'm not kidding, this is not engaging at all.
This could really hurt. Oh, can't they make this easy? Damn it! Oh, shit! I don't even like fucking heroin. I've got a complaint about your driving, asshole.
But even if we were to assume that this mechanic that's only used once in the entire campaign would have been delivered in an engaging way, that's not reason enough to rob players of satisfaction of not letting the truck get away in the first place. you need the driver dead anyway. Invincibility is probably one of the most abused by GTA 4 tricks. Practically every chase, both on foot and on a vehicle, has the target be invincible until a certain point, usually with barely any indication what that point would be, though you eventually get it with vehicles. They suddenly stop matching your speed, allowing to actually catch up to them. And until then, want to blow the tires off? Too bad, you can't. The irony is that there's a mission where a car can be damaged, but doing so will fail the mission. And remember, no checkpoints, so please restart from the beginning. What's more annoying is that during these chases it feels that vehicles have a set line they have to follow and physics don't apply to them anymore. This leads to the bike pushing away a car example I've used several times already, but also to other cases like how in the chases you literally can't push a car off its scripted path at all. The problem with this approach, considering that this is still an open world game, shit can happen. And when shit happens, scripting breaks. You can see a police car that's not chasing anyone during escape from law enforcement because it's not scripted to go beyond that point. Sometimes your allies can't find how to get to the next waypoint because a destroyed car blocked their path, go to a totally different place, and then just not know what to do. Allies might be scripted to get into a car you find, but should you need to get out of it because it's been caught on fire, tough luck, they will sit there and die in the explosion. And here's the thing, GTA 4's best and most cherished moments come out of systemic interactions, even those that are mission specific. There's one where a woman you have to kidnap tries to mess up your driving, and it led to the most hilarious fail I could ever imagine.
I'll scratch your fucking eyes out!
Scratch my fucking balls!
Please proceed to highlighted route.
I loved that moment, even though I had to replay the mission from the beginning. The woman is not scripted to mess things up only at particular checkpoints, it happens randomly because the game doesn't know where you're gonna be, which led to this amazing interaction. But despite GTA 4 systems literally being built for hilarious moments, like how people might hold on to vehicles you're trying to steal, the missions don't take advantage of that at all. You want to kill a target by driving over them? Too bad, when you approach, the game will play a cutscene where you're on foot and the car is teleported farther away, even though the scene after the target's death would make just as much sense had you run them over with the car. It's all the more confusing that there are missions with incredibly small moments that can be approached from multiple angles. Like for example, there is a person you have to kill in their apartment, but you have to lure them out into clear view first. You can shoot the TV or the cable dish to make it malfunction, or call on the phone the number of which you'll be able to see through the scope. That's a lot of details and a lot of choices for what is a really small task, but here's the kicker. It's still scripted. You can't use those options in other situations. While actual systems that get full-on tutorial missions like being able to pick up and throw objects don't receive any use at all. Another very underutilized aspect in level design is climbing. I think it's relevant only in a couple missions, even though it's obvious how it could make some of them more dependent on the player's approach. Sometimes the rigid scripting can even ruin your experience when an ally is just set to run into the midst of enemies and keeps dying. So you have to restart the whole driving to the endpoint process over and over and over again. At least you don't have to listen to the same dialogue every time. In fact, GTA 4 has alternative dialogues for every mission in case you're replaying it after a failure. That's kinda neat. Which is a ridiculous reaction from my side. Think about it. Absolutely every mission has alternative set of gameplay dialogues for replay. Only on a fail since you can't replay completed missions. That's a huge amount of writing and voiceovers for what is essentially it's cool, I won't get annoyed by repetition so much response. I do admit that hearing the same phrases over and over would be annoying, but the game already has a solution in the form of what happens when you have to replay a segment the third time. Nobody talks, and you can just listen to the radio, be it the absolutely hilariously written ads and talk shows, or a very nice collection of licensed music, some of which is absent from the PC version with the latest patches due to licensing expirations. In this particular mission I've been using as an example where your ally has a death wish, I was listening to the radio a lot, since the level required me to drive not to one, but 2 different points before getting to the actual combat encounter. Which leads to another issue: there's an overabundance of driving from point A to point B in the game. Combine that with the often unfulfilling driving mechanics and how sometimes, because of weird scripting, you have to replay the mission over and over again, you can see why I've been abusing the hell out of cap fast travel whenever possible. It's not like the money is really useful for anything else. There is no real point in buying weapons or ammo, because most of the time you get tons of them from the people you kill during missions anyway. With clothes, there is not that big a variety for you to go on huge shopping sprees. So cabs remained the only thing I would spend the ever-growing amount of money on. This does mean that I would skip tons of exploration, but outside of a number of narratively nice random encounters, it's not like there is a lot of meaningful stuff to do in the open world anyway, which I suppose is an opportune moment to discuss Liberty City itself. GTA 4's open world is incredibly authentic. Rich in detail, immersive, with an impeccable sense of place and time. It will take literal hours to analyze every part of Liberty City. There's such a stark difference between downtown, suburbs, industrial areas, as well as different variations of each in terms of how clean or dirty it is, what kind of population lives there, how many cops are around, what clothes everyone is wearing, and even their nationality. Many bystanders are speaking in their native language, not just to you, but with each other or on the phone.
Глаза открой! Что за мудак нахуй?
It's insane just how you can walk around and feel like you're in an actual, real place. I'm literally astounded by the depth of Liberty City as a location. You can discover something new every minute. I know I keep gushing about this, but I can't overstate how amazing of an open-world location Liberty City is. I also can't overstate how wasted it is. Look, I'm not of the opinion that an open world needs tons of activities to be good. I actually think that there's value in open worlds that are for the most part immersive window dressings for the main campaign or something like that. However, I think that if an open world tries to provide a lot of activities, then they must be engaging. And GTA 4 has tons of stuff for you to do. And it's all shit. I know, I'm sorry, it's harsh, but there is just no way I can defend activities in GTA 4 regardless of how immersive they are and how the city itself is absolutely amazing. I would prefer if they didn't exist at all. The side missions that are in the game, like fixer assassinations or racing ones, are very rudimentary, which would be fine if the core mechanics were engaging on their own. They're not. So rudimentary stuff is just boring, and actually there's not a lot of those missions anyway. GTA 4 wants your main activity between missions to be spending time with friends or girlfriends. Roman calling to go bowling became a meme, though admittedly he never did call me bowling. I guess it was patched out at some point. Not that I would accept the invitation anyway. The bowling minigame is utterly boring. Every minigame is. They're just not fun to play. So the prospect of setting up a meeting with a friend, getting to their home, then driving together over to a place with a minigame, then bringing them back home is not inviting at all. Even something that might sound like it's more fun, like powerboating, is not. Don't believe me? Just take a look at a friendship activity with a steroid junkie in real time.
Take us over to the Statue of Freedom. That's some intense shit.
Brucey?
Yeah, they're pretty.
No, they're fucking hot, man. They're smoking. We met up in a club and it was tense, wasn't it, man?
Yeah.
I was standing at the bar ordering a Magnum, scoping the floor, you know, flexing my pecs. And I saw these girls, and I felt it. They saw what I was packing, and they felt it too, didn't you?
Yeah, sure.
It wasn't the amount of money he was spending that attracted you to Brucey, was it, ladies?
Nah.
What are you talking about, man? These girls were as impressed with the body I was rocking as the bling I had on and the readies I was dropping. All right? Get rid of the attitude. You're a winner too, bro.
Life just got a lot better.
Live a life of luxury with a motorized scooter.
We've taken the #1 cause of tiredness, stress, and boredom and removed it from your life. That's right. Walk no more.
With the Relax Power X from Ambulate, it's not a wheelchair. It's a motorized scooter. You'll fly by your luxury home because with speed and ease.
Answer the question, are you fat because you're on a scooter? Or are you on a scooter because you're fat? Who cares? It doesn't matter. You're on a scooter and they're not.
Feel the pride and importance and special treatment you deserve.
Carefree. That's the Relax Power X motorized scooter from Ambulate. Take the weight off your feet.
Somebody caught you smiling.
A helicopter explosion just south of Algonquin has claimed the life of a Russian businessman. Edward Borodin died in a helicopter crash just south of Algonquin. Although some eyewitnesses suggested foul play and a dogfight between this and an unknown helicopter, local FIB officials tell me this was just an accident. One representative said it's clear.
You ladies are much hotter than that bitch. Let's cruise back, Nikki.
Stance News. The issue that's tearing American politics apart, even though most people don't care. Family Values Senator Travis Evans has been caught on tape soliciting sex in a Florida park men's bathroom. Senator Evans has been a leading backer of the marriage amendment. The senator claims he was reaching out to constituents to fully understand the issue. Residents of Liberty City are split on the issue of same-sex marriage.
If we allow them to marry, I won't have anyone to hang out with or go clubbing. As soon as people get married, they're lame and start asking you to be involved in three-ways. Do you know how horrible it is to be pinned between two fat, middle-aged people?
I slept with two guys, and the subject of marriage never even came up.
Former Secretary of Security Enforcement Bonnie Jefferson is going to be giving an address at the Civic Citadel in Liberty City next month on the growing threat of Russian and Eastern European crime in the United States. This is Weasel News.
This is Weasel News.
Sounds so true. That's so hip. It's broker.
I used to hold a big phone deep beside my castle walls. Stand my eye with cocky pride, wasted on a chase from the red line. Being the kid was pretty cool. I would say that really cool. And I think it's all still. I don't know what they saw in him. Spinning a call, my vision went soft. And my just got big head. My Corbett surrounded me, they had to love me. And so we all
The only mildly entertaining aspect was the dialogue. For the most part, the writing in GTA 4 is amazing. Not the stand-up writing, though.
She went, obesity is disease. Oh, no, it's not, is it? No, it's not. You just like eating, don't you? How is that a disease? Oh, I'm so fucking ill. Oh, I am well ill. I went, what's the disease? She went, everything tastes good. Everything. Not salads.
in what world this is considered funny?
Okay, don't play it again, sir. I'm just saying it's the shit. That's all I'm saying. The song is the shit. That's the national anthem for anybody who ever hustled at all. Even if you're a librarian, play that song in the library and see if it ain't the shit. You just be in the library, just minding your business, just.
Every day I'm hustling, 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 hustling.
Boring. Cabaret shows can be engaging though, but that's novelty, not content. Novelties exist to add some spice and variety, but they don't work as a core activity for you to do because why the hell would you engage with them on a regular basis? It's not like watching a passable in-game 3D model awkwardly dance in the hopes of being titillating, something that you would want to get back to after the so there is this in the game too reaction wears off. TV shows and ads in GTA 4 are ridiculous and fun, I'll give them that.
Therefore, we must travel through space, meet strangers, and kill them good! For democracy and liberty! Hurrah!
But I can give you wisdom!
And I can make you rich! Alright, I've heard enough of this shit! You know the drill, fellas!
But even for someone like me who absolutely loves slow-paced immersive games, watching a TV to watch a character watch a TV is too much to do all the time. But what else is there? Nothing. Bring a friend to eat some food, I guess. Eventually, if they like you enough, they will be able to provide various gameplay bonuses that are most of the time useless, since in many missions they're set to not respond to your phone calls, and often when you get exceptions, the scripting is too rigid for that to make a difference anyway. And you don't have to take my word for it. Through achievements, you can check the behavior of all players. Not the absolute best tracking solution, but it'll have to do now. And the majority doesn't seem to have been excited about making friends or doing side missions or, well, playing the game in the first place. Almost a quarter of the people who have bought GTA 4 on Xbox 360, which is the only platform that had achievements on launch, so the stats there are far more relevant than on PS3 or PC, did not complete the first mission. That takes 10 minutes to do. Tops, you just have to drive from point A to point B and watch a cutscene. And since the mission starts automatically and you can't get far from your cousin, you have to complete it even if you're just interested in open world mayhem. And then, the achievement for the mission Uncle Vlad, which is just a couple hours in, was received by 44% of players. Now you can't say that maybe a lot of people were interested only in multiplayer, which is available even before completing the first mission. Side note, I won't be covering multiplayer due to difficulties with setting up games nowadays, but I don't think playing it would change anything I say. I guess it would be more enjoyable for me than single player since social interactions make everything more engaging. But even on Xbox 360, most didn't bother playing multiplayer, only 10% of players have received the achievement for getting the first rank there. Of course, if you transform that into actual numbers with an approximate calculation of how many game copies were sold on Xbox 360 based on publicly available information, means that 1.5 million Xbox 360 players have played GTA 4 online, which is a huge number. But this also means that more than 8 million people have dropped the game anywhere between 1 minute and 3-4 hours of playing it and never came back. Again, there's flaws in such approximations based on achievements, but still, this is definitely an indicator of something. I myself have finished GTA 4 only out of a sense of obligation, but it only strengthened my belief in one particular thesis. With some exceptions that obviously exist because there may be a jump or decrease in quality after a certain point, you don't have to finish a game to make a proper analysis of it. My arguments regarding Grand Theft Auto 4 literally didn't change between 5 hours of playing it and 25 hours. Just more examples available. And to be fair, even though I would rage quit on an almost daily basis, I did still have interest to go through the game for the sake of experiencing its quite amazing dialogue writing. Now, I have to point out that I specifically mentioned amazing dialogue writing and not amazing story. Grand Theft Auto 4's story is definitely enjoyable to experience because the moment-to-moment conversations are so good. But the actual sequence of events, character arcs, pacing, the structure, rep and everything, all that's, well, let's say problematic. Though before we go further, I have to mention that I am really befuddled by the existing consensus regarding GTA 4's ludonarrative dissonance. Don't get me wrong, there is ludonarrative dissonance in the game, but it's not what everyone thinks it is. I'm really not sure why so many people say that Nico's characterization and motivation go against GTA 4's mission design and open world nature, where you can cause a lot of destruction and mayhem, and how the game's serious tone of the story goes against the silly gameplay and satirical world building. In the past, I hadn't played GTA 4 long enough to have an opinion of my own, so took this for granted, but now that I actually have played the game to completion, I can't help but ask a question. I'm sorry, but have we played the same game? GTA 4's violence and amount of killing goes against Niko Bellic's character? Are we talking about this Niko Bellic here?
What about you?
Help me!
Come on, Tupac!
Landor! Help me!
Get out of here now! And if you come back, I'll kill you! You understand?
You forgot this? You Benin pricks!
Strong!
Shit, Nico. What did you do?
He was going to stab me!
Now he's going to kill you!
Fuck him!
This is the Niko Bellic that wouldn't get violent?
You were the stupid one, Vladdy boy. Nobody fucks with my family.
So you want to say that when you play as this guy, your first thought is, I'm not sure he would go on a murder spree?
No, don't be like that. We can find a way out of this. Bunch of idiot Russians.
I will kill every one of them.
No, that's exactly what you won't do.
Killing everyone is literally the first thing that comes to the person's mind. Sure, he's not exactly happy with that and at times feels like he's trapped in a vicious circle of violence, but also considering his past that not only includes participating in a war but also doing lots of heavy crime, including human trafficking, he's not sure if he's good for anything else other than that violence.
This is all that is left of me. What am I good at, Roman? What is my trade? Healing dead. Because that is all that is open.
And yes, that's tragic. But just because a drug abuser understands doing drugs is wrong doesn't mean they're making a conscious effort to stop. And on a metaphorical level, Niko doesn't try to get off his drug, while an argument that his personality and desires go against GTA 4's gameplay requires him to at least try. He says he got to Liberty City to follow the American dream, sure, but he never even attempts to make money legally. And let's not forget that his real motivation, that's revealed a bit later, is about getting revenge on the person who has betrayed Niko's squad, which led to the death of almost everyone in it. Yeah, Niko admitting that is a somber moment, but immediately after it's followed by a hilarious reaction.
When I was in the army, we were going on a mission to ambush a squad who had killed a lot of innocent people. They were our enemies. But we never did it. There were 15 of us, all boys from the village. But one of us betrayed the group. It was a setup. For money. 12 people died. 3 escaped. I know the traitor was not me. So for 10 years, I've been searching for the other 2. One of them lives here.
Why are you telling me this now? Do you always get sentimental after you kill people?
You kept asking.
Which brings us back to the topic of the story's tone. You know, I really love the movie In Bruges. It is ridiculously funny. It is also extremely dark, and I cried watching it. It's such a wild contrast of emotions, but it works so well together. Now, I'm not saying that GTA 4 is like in Bruges, but I do think it's important to understand that a contrast in the gravity of a story's themes and the nature of how it's presented does not necessarily mean that it's inconsistent. So silly gameplay and a serious story is not something that can't inherently work well together. But also, I'm not really sure why I have to make this argument, because I don't agree with the thesis that GTA 4's narrative takes itself too seriously and melodramatically in the first place. The game literally starts with a BDSM scene featuring somebody named Dave who we'll never see again, beyond an Easter egg that he died later.
Daddy's back, you bitches! Daddy's back, you bitches!
Dave, come on.
Come on. Nico, what are you doing?
Dave is not coming.
Ignore him. Come on, we gotta get this thing ready before we dock. Let's go.
And then almost immediately after, our cousin Roman meets us and talks about American titties.
Nico, you ever had two women at once? 4 big titties to be playing with? Mr. Sam da
If that's a game taking itself very seriously, that's a very juvenile definition of the notion. Every character is one stereotype or another that's taken to the extreme. And that's not bad in this case, because the juxtaposition between them and the more indeed serious and often bewildered Nico is what makes conversations with them so amazing. From a family of Rastafarians that Nico definitely has trouble understanding.
Sure, I promise I'll comfort to a fool on Nico. A boy for creep before him can walk, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, my youth, some boy them dip on the corner and thing, and the boy them sell some things and thing, and I go on and I say, oh, them don't want to give me my money and thing, and every corner my corner, and I want my money and thing, you know. I no sweat I go, you know, I want to deal with the case proper, you know, see it.
Alright, let me explain. It's a business thing I going down there.
Right.
They are selling weed, but they're not supposed to sell weed, and they're not cutting them in.
Okay.
So when you go down there and deal with them, see?
To a crooked policeman who keeps calling himself a good man.
Listen, where to begin? I don't know. Let me put it like this. If a guy makes a mistake, should that ruin his life? People don't understand how life is. Life is like a bowl of fruit, slowly rotting in a hot kitchen.
I don't give a fuck about the life lessons, friend. What do you want?
I'm a good guy!
Melodrama? This shit's comedy gold.
So, Nico Bellic, you think it's okay to kill my employees?
If he is an asshole, yes.
Do it! I agree.
Asshole, look at me like I'm a piece of shit.
Shut up, Roman. Roman, shut up.
Shut him up.
Shut up, Roman. Roman, shut up.
Fuck! Mikhail! Shut up! Stop shooting people, you maniac! My wife doesn't like when people shout! Whatever!
Comedy gold, I tell you.
Manny.
Now, word out, bitch. You better stop slinging that shit on my streets, yo. We don't want it anymore. Hey, OJ, you catching this?
Rolling.
This, Manny, for fuck's sake. The streets have spoken. Now leave my people alone. Yo, Nico, what are you doing here?
I am not in the mood for this right now!
Well, he said he was going to bust a dealer.
I can just keep making this a reel of hilarious moments.
Now listen, people! We're your friends! Me and me brother here...
Why are you telling them we're brothers, you idiot? That's gonna make it hard for them to find us, isn't it?
I'm trying to be honest with these people. We put them through a lot today.
Fuck these people, fuck your cause. That shit's over. Ireland's not the only thing that's green. Dollars are too.
Now you said bloody Ireland. That's gonna narrow the search, ain't it?
Fuck you! Take the needle out your arm, then tell me what to do.
There is even visual humor too.
Mikhail, please, don't do this. Shut up. Shut the fuck up. I'm begging you. Said, shut the fuck up. Please, don't do this.
So, yeah, you can see why I don't really agree that as a whole GTA 4 takes itself too seriously. Though of course, as mentioned before, I do think it has problems. Can you believe that this guy is going to become pretty much the main antagonist, by the way? That comes out of nowhere and is a sign of structural issues within the narrative. It tries to weave together two plot lines based on Nico's motivation, chasing the American dream and seeking revenge. The beginning makes sense. Nico arrives in America and meets with cousin Roman, who in his letters was boasting how he lives as a rich man, which turns out is far from true. In fact, Roman has a big gambling problem that often puts him into debts he's not able to pay. So at first we have to keep getting Roman out of his troubles, thus getting entangled with the criminal element. Eventually, Nico's violent tendencies get the best of him, Roman's apartment and workplace is burned down, one thing leads to another, and we work for more and more bosses with the purpose of getting more money. Technically, a classic GTA structure. But here's the thing, everything that happens with the revenge throughline feels incidental as a result. Nico never actively searches for the traitor. He just keeps doing jobs for various people, hoping that one day one of them is going to provide a lead. So we have a weird situation where this whole aspect of Nico's motivation is relevant only 4 times throughout the entire game. First, when Nico actually reveals it. The next moment is about finding one of the survivors thanks to the lead from one of the bosses, but it turns out that's not the traitor. After, the actual traitor is brought to us and we have to make a choice whether to spare or kill him. And then there's another choice which defines the actual ending, that thematically tries to connect both the revenge plot and the American Dream one. This approach makes it feel like for the most part searching for the traitor doesn't actually matter, that Nico's interest is mostly in just money. Which in a way makes sense, since Nico shares money with Roman, and as much as he is an optimistic foil to Nico's nihilism and attempts to dissuade Nico from participating in criminal activities, annoyingly keeps spending everything on debts and gambling. And this is where the true ludonarrative dissonance of the game comes in. You don't feel the aforementioned constant lack of money in gameplay, you just keep getting richer, and nothing to spend that money on. This, in turn, renders any potential criticisms of how hard it may be to go by in America as an immigrant moot. At one point, Roman mentions how hard he worked for that apartment Nico considered to be shit.
Do you know how long it took me to get set up here? You don't, because it was easy for you. You had it all from day one. It took me months to get some cash together. Finally, I bought a couch, and then another. Then I got the depot. I slept under my desk at that place for over a year. Then I got the apartment. The apartment you thought was so shitty. Well, it doesn't matter. And now it's gone, along with everything else.
I said I was sorry.
You have a lot to apologize for. Since you got here, I've had my computer smashed. I've been beaten up. I was kidnapped and then shot in the stomach. My apartment got burned down and so did my business. Things have been going so great. Just great since you showed up!
But at no point neither Nico nor the player actually experience those struggles, even after they lose everything. Crime pays, apartments are just given to you, no need to worry about rent, nothing. Regardless of what ending you choose, it will result in Nico's disappointment in the American Dream. But what dream is it anyway? GTA 4 never really focuses on any of that as the main point, instead choosing to have as many quirky bosses to do missions for as possible. This results in even more structural and pacing issues. Every mission giver has their own little subplots, some of which can have various ending variations. Some of the subplots interconnect. Some involve characters that GTA 4 will later make playable in the DLCs, which doesn't make their sudden appearances and disappearances in the main game any less abrupt. Character relationships go nowhere. Ray Bulgarin is a person from Europe who thinks Nico stole from him and is pissed. But besides encountering him 2 times, nothing happens. He runs away both times, the subplot is left unresolved until a DLC for a character who previously didn't have any relation to the guy. But at least he has some importance, many characters don't feel like they matter at all. There's lots of drama surrounding the Italian mafia, but it serves no real purpose. Technically there is a flow there, the subplots of various crime bosses do get connected to other ones through the characters you meet, or the stolen goods you're dealing with like heroin or diamonds, but it all just feels, once again, incidental. The cast is too big, a large part of it remains one note, the importance of some over others is quite frankly befuddling. At the end of the day, it's one of many signs of GTA 4 having massive ambitions, but not quite reaching them. GTA 4 wants to do a lot. Maybe too much. The anomaly of GTA 4, I guess, is that it still remains polished despite that. Usually games that try to do much more than they can handle fall apart at the seams. But Grand Theft Auto 4 doesn't. It's an inconsistent mess that doesn't know what it wants to do, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it because every unfitting feature still gets the attention required to be fully realized. Fully realized doesn't mean that it's good or meaningful or useful though, but I suppose it's enough to make it feel very impressive. There are alternative calls and dialogues depending on your choices. At one point you get 2 mission markers, one for going on a date and another for saving Roman from trouble. And if you decide to go on a date, Roman will ask you what the fuck and will have you pick him up from the hospital.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to protect me from those crazy loan sharks you attacked, Nico!
You shouldn't have borrowed money from them in the first place, Roman. Anyway, I was seeing Michelle. I thought you wanted me to date her.
Not when it means me getting beat up and sent to hospital! Come and pick me up, cousin, and at least tell me that you got some titties out. Maybe then your betrayal will be worthwhile. It was nice titties, yes?
That's really cool. But this kind of stuff happens very rarely, and only a limited number of missions have alternative lines depending on how you completed them. Most levels don't have that functionality, even if acknowledging player choices is definitely far more important than the immersive and detailed but largely useless internet functionality. GTA 4 wanted to have both, but in the end, none are deep enough. This trying to have its cake and eat it too goes beyond the depths of various features. GTA 4 has insanely detailed animations, like for example when you have to pick up realistically placed objects to throw. But then to pick up ammo and money you have to just walk over highlighted by different color pickups that are automatically and instantly added to your inventory, like in the previous GTA games. Now, I think that's a better solution than having a detailed animation for everything, but the point is that these are 2 wildly different approaches to the same action that don't necessarily fit together, and there's more where that came from. And this kind of pulling into different directions also affects stuff like visuals. The weather effects in this game, oh, they're so good. Rain is fantastic. Fog, oh my god, have you seen this fog, man? You can make a Silent Hill mod with this fog, it's amazing. But then for the sake of grittiness or something, the game just plops single color filters all over. Sometimes the game is just orange. Sometimes it's almost black and white. What for? It mushes all the intricate detail the city has into a jumbled mess. The game looks best in the moments when these filters are not applied at all, or at least are somewhat subdued. But outside of those moments, it looks ugly despite the very impressive fidelity. As do the characters. And it's not that they're low quality or plain bad, but once again GTA 4 wants to have its cake and eat it too. Have realistic characters but retain stylized designs and face proportions. And again, had the game decided to focus on just a single aspect, it would have been much better. The loading screens are proof of that. Those concept arts look so good. But then when models based on that art attempt to have realistic textures, it's uncanny. It may sound like I'm nitpicking and have been doing so throughout the entire video. From a certain perspective, I am, because it can't be denied that most of this time I've been focusing on smaller details. But these smaller issues, when taken together, make up the game. If you can forgive or ignore them because the full realization of the features I've mentioned is enough to keep you engaged, I'm very glad for you. I couldn't. I did find GTA 4 compelling in many ways, and in the end there were a fair amount of things that I enjoyed. But for the most part, I was bored, I was annoyed, I was frustrated, I was angry.
Huh?
decir que nosotros nacimos con talento. Ellos nacieron con talento para...
Huh?
You guys are going crazy in this town. Trust me, man. As a guy who has been shot, it's no fun sitting in the hospital and getting a sponge bath.
I'm in position, Pecky.
I get why there are people who love it so much, and I hope that in my writing I was very clear with aspects that I do think are actually awesome. But I felt so much better not having played GTA 4 at all. There were only some moments there and there that I really truly enjoyed. But also, let's be fair, my most favorite part of the game are its dialogues, and you could just watch those on YouTube instead of actually playing GTA 4. And I know I sound very harsh, but this video is just as much about me trying to dissect as objectively as possible a game as it is about me expressing my purely subjective personal opinions, and I really do not like GTA 4 or what it's trying to do. Here's the interesting part though. GTA 4 has 2 DLCs, which are standalone campaigns, much smaller in scope. And it would have been very easy for them to just be more of GTA 4. But they're not. And I actually liked them. And had fun, imagine that. So let's talk about them. The first DLC puts us in the shoes of one biker, Johnny Klebitz, a fellow Nico had a couple of dealings with in the main game. The story spins a tale about the tragic fall of the biker gang The Lost, following the return of their old leader Billy after he was freed from his court-ordered rehab. I have to admit, I was a bit wary to start a DLC focused on bikers, considering just how much I hated motorcycles in the main game, they were so finicky to handle. But The Lost and Damned is not only the most fun I have had driving in GTA 4, but it just has some really satisfying bike handling mechanics. I specifically mention bike handling cause nothing was done to cars and those remain sort of awful. But you know what? I didn't use cabs. It was just so satisfying to ride on a bike, weaving between cars, power sliding as you turn around, that I was going everywhere by my own means. Here's the thing, the bikes here don't behave realistically. The core one, called the Haxer, is particularly very heavy for its actual construction, and Johnny is practically glued to the bikes. But you know what that does with the gameplay? That's right, it makes it more engaging. Sure, sometimes weird shit still happens, but it's actually manageable to quickly fix that. Unlike the main game, The Lost and Damned knows precisely what it wants to do. It has focus. It has a fantasy surrounding biker gang life. While the DLC doesn't fix any core problems with GTA 4 that relate to issues of actual gameplay systems, and let's be fair, it would be unreasonable to expect it to do so, it does its best to alleviate every problem I had with the original campaign and improve upon it. Perhaps sometimes in a way that's too basic, but basic can be more than enough to make everything fun. There are new weapons in the game that actually feel different, like the grenade launcher with its delayed explosions, the super fast assault shotgun, or the not so fast but very powerful sawn-off shotgun. The latter can be used while on a bike, and it's just so satisfying to shoot rival bikers off their vehicles with it. It's also very effective at making cars explode. Explosions. There are so many things that explode in this DLC, and this time it's very easy to actually blow them up. Practically every combat arena has a lot of red explosive barrels. And even if there's no barrels, your new weapons are very effective against cars. Exploding shit is a very primal, not complex satisfaction, sure, but it is enjoyable. And the mission design actually lets you make your own decisions regarding how you want to tackle something. When you need to steal a prison bus, do you wait for it to leave the courtyard, kill its driver and get in, or do you just burst in, guns blazing, and steal the bus while it's still parked? Up to you. When you need to chase someone, you can kill them practically immediately. If someone ever had immunity turned on in this campaign, I didn't notice it. And when you explode a car that has an object you need to take, the game doesn't fail the mission to punish you for doing so. You can just pick the thing up from the debris. And look, a lot of these missions are not that complex or don't try to do anything fancy, but you'd be amazed just how much the simple act of not being rigidly scripted and doing things either the way you want or the way you improvise in this open systemic world matters. And if you fail, hey, there's checkpoints now, so you don't have to be afraid to experiment. Your allies are also pretty much useful every mission you can call them to, sometimes changing how it plays or the dialogue that happens. And it feels like The Lost and Damned is a bit scared that after the GTA 4 experience you're not going to call any backup at all. One of your gang members keeps pestering you with messages to make sure to get your buddies involved. But you know, I'll take it. Side activities are also more fun. Gang warfare random missions again aren't anything complex. You either have to defeat some rival bikers, attack a stronghold, or destroy a vehicle guarded by a convoy. But fun driving, plus an easy and satisfying way to create chaos, equals fun activity. There's also an interesting side effect with all the bike shootouts that happen both in the main missions and this gang warfare in particular. Money became much more useful since you will be in need of restocking ammo at your weapon master far more often, as with the amount of vehicular combat it's not feasible to stop every time you kill someone and pick their weapons up. Races are also more enjoyable too, and during them you receive a bat with which you can push people off their bikes and send them flying in the most satisfying way possible.
See you at the finish!
Oh yeah. They still feel a bit too simplistic overall, and I think that it was a mistake for there to be 3-lap races, as the third one is usually the most boring, but I wouldn't miss a race if one would be nearby. I couldn't imagine doing that in the base game. This is what I meant by rudimentary missions being still enjoyable when the mechanics are satisfying and engaging. Even the new minigames are kinda fun. The high-low card game and arm wrestling are very simple, but their simplicity is exactly the reason why I would sometimes do them to distract myself when visiting the safe house, which puts them in stark contrast against pool/billiards that's also in the safe house, and it's still as boring as before. Too slow, too prolonged, and therefore ignored. But surprisingly enough, I did enjoy Air Hockey, the new tabletop minigame added to the campaign. Look at how Johnny slides left and right. No need for fancy animations, but it's cool. I actually would hang out with biker friends from time to time because of that, even though I didn't have to for gameplay rewards. This time you don't need to keep friendship relationships up to receive access to their abilities. Besides, now you don't have to call up everyone individually, you hang out as a group. And remember how I said that contrast doesn't necessarily have to mean inconsistency? The Lost and Damned in terms of gameplay focused on the arcade half of GTA 4, but the visual side decided to focus on realism instead. Johnny's model was fully redone in comparison to his health from GTA 4. No exaggerated features like a really long neck, far more details on his face texture. The Lost and Damned doesn't try to combine stylized and realistic looks together. It knows that it wants to go for more realism. And while not all existing characters were remade as significantly as Johnny, mostly it was some touch-ups there and there, still enough was done in that direction and the new models keep following that style. And I don't know how visible it is going to be with the video compression, but the film grain that was added on top of everything creates a very grungy look that actually makes the overblown color filters fit the visuals more. Though sadly it's not all shine and rainbows in this department, while there were several steps forward, some things are still flawed. For example, the lip sync system is still the same as it was in GTA 4, which means it had more stylized proportions in mind. And when it is applied to the Lost and Damned more realistic faces, sometimes they look uncanny or outright creepy. Yeesh. But hey, still, overall, visually, The Lost and Damned feels much more wholesome. And in terms of narrative too, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but The Lost and Damned not only retains the great writing style, but actually has a far better structured story, arcs, and progression. It is really engaging and sad to see how this gang falls apart despite Johnny's best efforts to keep it together. And Johnny is not the most kind person or anything, but there is this sense of integrity that adds complexity. Plus, in general, the sidecast tends to be more nuanced than the more caricaturish GTA 4, and Billy is a particularly enjoyable foil.
So, Johnny boy, where's my bike?
You know where it is.
Let me rephrase the question. Where the fuck is my bike and where the fuck haven't you got it back for me?
Because you know where it is.
Are you deaf? Give me that whiskey. Are you fucking deaf?
No!
Then answer the goddamn question. Why the fuck haven't you got it back for me, friend, brother?
One word. Business. Like I told you when you were in there. Or were you so busy playing holier than thou, you started believing your own bullshit?
Forgive me. You know, I've had a complicated few weeks.
I can only imagine.
Shut up. You know, coming off heroin's kind of hard. I think I acquired this touch of amnesia. What business is more important, Mr. 1980s yuppie big shot, than your best friend's bike when he's close to getting a 15-year stretch?
The business that pays his lawyer's fees. The business that puts food on all of our tables. The business that we are all in while you're out pretending to be saved.
Get my bike!
What am I, your fucking dog?
I told you you should have gotten the bike.
You told me. You told me. You don't tell me shit, you little fuck.
The irony is that it is the original GTA 4 that holds back the story of the Lost and Damned. I've mentioned at the beginning of this segment that Nico had some dealings with Johnny, and Roman had an encounter with what was heavily hinted to be Johnny. The DLC, of course, tries to keep those crossovers intact, and while it admirably attempts to connect them as sensibly as possible with the core plot, those connections and crossovers mess up the pace and flow of what otherwise is an engaging and strongly written tale about a brotherhood trying to keep itself intact and failing. I wish this story would have been fully standalone so it could truly shine on its own, but alas. At least with its 22 main missions, The Lost and Damned doesn't overstay its welcome, unlike GTA 4 that would almost reach 100. And I think that's for the best. The DLC couldn't add depth to GTA 4 to take full advantage of the systems and technology. There are mechanics like improving stats of your killable and unkillable gang members that feel like it doesn't matter at all. Far more things have to be done to sustain enjoyment for a prolonged amount of time, but the DLC is over before it gets boring, leaving us with a fun, streamlined, and mostly focused ride. You would think that in the second GTA 4 DLC called The Ballad of Gay Tony, we would play as Gay Tony. But no, we're actually in control of one Luis Fernando Lopez, Tony's right-hand man and honestly the best friend. But both are really great characters and their relationship is gold.
Oh, wait.
What?
I forgot something.
Forgot what?
The explosives.
Explosives? Yo, what's wrong with you, man? You in a nightclub, not a terrorist cell.
Ow, Rocco's gone nuts. He's gonna burn the clubs down for insurance. He's gonna fucking kill us.
Yeah, he's gone crazy, and you're running around with some bombs, okay? What kind of drugs are you on? I hope they're strong.
I told him I'd take care of his union problems for him. It's the only way out. Either that or they kill me.
Yeah, I wish you'd talk to me about this first, man, okay? Blowing shit up ain't exactly your side of the business, okay? It's not your forte.
What do you care about the business? You got your fucking head in the clouds, huh? You think you're a big shot. You're a nothing, and soon you're gonna be a dead nothing.
Yeah, no doubt, boss. Now where you going?
Think I got a guy digging up Frankfurt Avenue for Liberty Electric.
Okay, what else?
The transport workers guy is driving an out-of-service subway train through North Holland. I meant to take the whole thing out.
A subway train? Jesus Christ, please tell me that's it.
The head of the LTA is out of Francis International in his private jet.
And you'll probably blow yourself up as soon as you walk out the door. You ain't doing this.
I got to. It's the only way you can survive. Get out of my way.
I'm sorry, as much as I'd like to right now, I'm not letting you kill yourself.
Try and stop me, huh?
Okay.
Go!
Shit, Tony. You're a real piece of fucking work, you know that?
If The Lost and Damned is significantly held back by the original GTA 4 only in the narrative aspect, while the rest of the game attempts to work within the same framework, The Ballad of Gay Tony is held back by the entirety of GTA 4. Here's the thing, this DLC attempts to get itself fully unhinged. It even lets you steal a tank. A tank, but it's a tank that does this. Yeah. Honestly, this is the DLC in a nutshell. There is not much I can actually say. There is a bunch of missions that should be fun in theory, and they are better designed than the ones from GTA 4, but the game's mechanics hold them back. The ramps while stealing cars with Brucey and Morty, anyone? You get to steal a combat helicopter and then shoot down the yacht from which you stole the same helicopter, which definitely sounds awesome. But the helicopter is a pain to control, and GTA 4's core gameplay ruins this mission. There's so much variety here, but the mechanical quirks don't let it truly shine. Even the drug war side activity, which is essentially a rehash of gang warfare from The Lost and Damned, feel a bit painful because it involves cars. And if cars were tuned in this DLC, then not nearly as much as the bikes were in the last one. And the thing is, Ballad of Gay Tony adds a scoring system to its missions, as well as a possibility to replay them once you complete the main story. In theory, it should provide a nice incentive to get back. In practice, completing these missions once with these mechanics was enough for me. I wouldn't even dare to focus on side activities either. Again, they're fun in theory, but the implementation can often lead to frustration. In terms of story and the overall fantasy, I guess this DLC wanted to showcase how excessive the rich lifestyle is and ridicule the hell out of that. But again, practice differs from theory, and in the end this whole endeavor feels like a bunch of random missions vaguely connected by a through line that exists just because. Lewis's appearances in the base game felt random, but here, everything is. At least Lewis himself understands just how ridiculous the situations he's getting into are, which makes it all the more hilarious that he just rolls with it.
Yusuf!
Papa! What are you doing here? Welcome! Welcome, Papa! This is my business associate, Mr.
Luis.
Mr. Lewis. Allah, he is the greatest technical advisor in the whole city. And this is his wife, Jaundice.
Careful, motherfucker!
Yes, and you know, we were just having a little creative meeting and things went a bit crazy, and I somehow lost my pants.
Weirdly enough, I don't have much to say about the Ballad of Gay Tony. It takes all the positive lessons from The Lost and Damned, including not overstaying its welcome, and tries to extrapolate that into this absolutely wild and bonkers ride. But I didn't enjoy it as much as The Lost and Damned. That DLC could feel very basic at times, but its simplicity allowed us to indulge in the mayhem. The Ballad of Gay Tony tries to do far more interesting and varied things, but it's held back by how the base game is built and structured. A real shame. Now we get to the fun part, assigning a score to Grand Theft Auto 4 and its standalone DLCs based on my Stasocritic Rating system. 5 categories of different weights that have 11 possible scores from 0 to 10, each with their own criteria. I have to mention that Stasocritic represents a numerical abstraction of all my arguments. It neither dictates nor criticizes your enjoyment of the game or lack thereof. I suppose you can guess why I am putting this disclaimer out there. The first category is design. It is the most important part of the scoring system with the largest weight, 4, because at the end of the day, how a game is built and played defines its quality the most. Now, when it comes to the original Grand Theft Auto 4, if you have watched my video in its entirety, you could notice that I praised a lot of the game's technical and immersive prowess, but the actual design aspects that relate to gameplay, mechanics, and missions received practically only criticism. Driving is often infuriating, shooting is basic, and the AI in most missions doesn't help. And speaking of missions, there's only several I properly enjoyed and can actually call good. The technology is wasted. Instead of the game pushing for emergent stories based on interactions with its systems, it pushes us to play boring bowling minigames. Based on the criteria, I'm assigning a 3. You can literally feel the potential of what is possible, but the game never quite reaches it, and there is not a single design facet that I haven't heavily criticized. The Lost and Damned DLC campaign actually does a lot to try and fix the issues of the original game. Driving is more fun, even though that applies only to bikes, but still. New weapons are more powerful and can do a lot of damage to the environment, cars, and explosive battles, which are far more commonly placed in combat arenas. It's not great, it's pretty basic, but it's enough for the DLC to be far more focused and get a 5. Particularly with the side activities actually playing into the biker fantasy rather than a bunch of random stuff. The Ballad of Gay Tony DLC, on the other hand, focuses more on the random stuff, but at least it's random gameplay stuff, not cabaret shows and stand-ups. Driving tanks and dancing minigames, chasing a subway train to explode the shit out of it, and base jumping. There is a lot of variety, however the DLC doesn't actually fix any of the core gameplay issues, plus it adds boring rudimentary stuff of its own, like club management missions, though to be fair there's not a lot of that. So it will get assigned a 6. This DLC is the one that takes advantage of the game's technology the most, but sadly is blocked by the implementation of mechanics in the base game. The next Stasocritic category is emotions with a weight of 3. It's the second highest because our enjoyment matters a lot, and one can love even flawed experiences. The original GTA 4 is going to get a 3. While the game's writing was captivating enough that I could bear to eventually finish the story, after some careful thought I can't deny that I absolutely hated a huge chunk of the experience. But it would also be unfair to say that there was nothing compelling for me. Still, I honestly would rather not finish the game, and that plays a huge part in the assignment of this score. The Lost and Damned, on the other hand, I thoroughly enjoyed. I will assign a 9 for emotions. I actually had fun with it, and felt that not only the main campaign was engaging, but also the side missions. And I wish I could assign the same to the Ballad of Gay Tony, but it will get an 8. I had enough fun with the main campaign, but I ignored a lot of the side missions because due to the mechanics I couldn't really be bothered to go through anything more than once. Except dancing, that was pretty fun. Could do without the constant hookups that happened after though. Now let's move on to Cohesion, a category with a weight of 2. It's about how well all the different parts of a game work together to create a singular, cohesive experience. Oh boy, let's just get this over with. GTA 4 gets a 2. While it is definitely not a cohesive game, it is not necessarily a case of there's no connective tissue at all. It's more a case of there's too many possibilities for what the connective tissue could be. Things could have actually worked quite nicely had the game managed to decide in which direction it wants to go. The Lost and Damned is quite the opposite. I will assign an 8. There are some things that lack focus, a bunch inherited from the original game, but overall, the DLC manages to implement the biker gang fantasy really well, both in terms of the story and what you're doing in the campaign. The Ballad of Gay Tony, on the other hand, though, doesn't quite reach the same level, sadly. I will assign a 6. While it does have a more or less consistent through line surrounding excessive behavior among the rich, like I mentioned before, it has too much random stuff. We move on to the context category. It's about everything that provides context to the game world, characters, the narrative, and player stories. The weight is 1, as technically, even if the context is absolute shit, the game can still be enjoyable. Grand Theft Auto 4 has absolutely amazing dialogue writing. Practically every conversation is gold, I swear. However, the game fails to connect that into a proper structure, arc, a lot of characters are not actually fleshed out, some stuff quickly becomes irrelevant, basically all the issues we have discussed during the story segment of the video. But the dialogue writing is still so good that I will assign a 7. The story is thoroughly enjoyable because of that, but I can't say it's a strong representation of a properly built narrative. Like with gameplay, The Lost and Damned has a much stronger sense of focus in its story surrounding this previously tied biker gang being torn apart from the inside. The characters and their personalities are just as good, if not better, but while the narrative has a much more solid structure, it remains hostage to the original story's desire to have characters from DLC intersect with what is happening on Nico's side, and that brings in needless distractions that also mess up the flow in the second half. But still, what The Lost and Damned has is actually strong enough to get an 8. The Ballad of Gay Tony, though, sadly retains only the great dialogue writing part, which is what really helps it get assigned a 6. Otherwise, its narrative is just a collection of somewhat random events that do attempt to be connected logically, but they're not really, it's just stuff happening. Finally, we get to aesthetics. I won't get into too much detail here since there was already enough discussion about it before, both in terms of advantages and disadvantages. Suffice it to say, even though on a technological level the game does so many things that would make it deserve a 10, I will assign an 8 to GTA 4 and the Ballad of Gay Tony and a 9 to The Lost and Damned. GTA 4 is held back by its stylistical indecisiveness, which negatively affects how aesthetically pleasing everything feels. The Ballad of Gay Tony is held back by GTA 4. The far brighter and lighter atmosphere often doesn't work as well as it should within the confines of the game, which leaves us with The Lost and Damned that gets a 9 as it takes the most advantage of what the original game does, but sadly still has some unpolished aspects. And now, summing up all scores and taking every weight into account, we can get the final Stasocritic rating for Grand Theft Auto 4 and each of its DLCs. GTA 4 gets a score of 36. Now before anyone gets their pitchforks out, I do have to mention that the Stasocritic system makes use of the entire scoring range. Only once games get below 30 do I start considering them various shapes of actually bad. 30s is within what I call the disappointing range, meaning that while I do not necessarily think it's a good game myself, people of particular tastes can definitely find it enjoyable, which seems like it fits perfectly the situation with GTA 4 as there are a lot of people who like it, obviously. The Lost and Damned overall was the most enjoyable of the bunch for me, and it gets a final Stasocritic rating of 73. A good, solid title that fans of the genre should enjoy. Personally, it's the most fun I had while playing anything related to GTA 4. Even more fun than the Ballad of Gay Tony, which gets a final rating of 67. A very nice experience, sadly not as strong as it could have been had it been created on a better foundation, but as long as you know what to expect, you can have enjoyment with it too. And there you have it, folks! Grand Theft Auto 4 and its DLCs reviewed and rated. I suppose it's not quite what one would necessarily expect when discussing such a critically acclaimed game, but I hope you've seen where I was coming from. In the end, would I recommend Grand Theft Auto 4 to anyone? Well, no, but feel free to call that my bias from originally disliking the game all the way back in 2008. It should be noted though that I've changed my mind on plenty of games after playing them more thoroughly. This hasn't happened with GTA 4, in fact I'm even more angry at the game, while before I was indifferent. The DLCs were definitely an improvement and I did like them, but I can't say I would feel any worse had I not experienced them at all. I don't think it would be too presumptuous of me to say that GTA 4's critical success is largely related to mistaken technical advancement and novelties for quality, as only by appreciating the technology and all the numerous polished details in the game can you really enjoy it. Which includes the design of the open world city, which I'm sure played a huge role in enhancing the multiplayer experience, as then while exploring it with friends you'd be able to find just a massive amount of wonderful details. But if you're like me and are more interested in the overall sense of cohesion in combination with polished mechanics, then you'll face just a ton of frustrations and are unlikely to enjoy at the very least the base GTA 4. I don't want to claim that I know what is the actual thought process behind the creation of DLCs, but I do want to note that if people making them would think GTA 4 is as perfect as it could be, there wouldn't have been attempts to fix so many things in the new campaigns. Still, it can't be denied that whatever one thinks about GTA 4, it made history. And regardless whether you agree with me or not, I hope you have enjoyed this video and I thank you for watching it. Don't forget to comment, like and subscribe.